I was asked by Pete, did you ever think you're going to be spending over half a year, on the Gospel of John? No, I did not. I figured we'd be through John in no time at all. But here's what I've learned about John. You can spend years on it. John is a clever writer. You could tell this was not written like the other Gospels, obviously, but under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, he put a lot of Easter eggs, what we call Easter eggs now, inside of it, right? And these little tiny things you just have to go, oh, John, you're so clever, And there's one of them in this one, and it's kind of, you can read John and get the normal stuff anywhere, but this you get the weird stuff here. And this is just one of those weird things that just caught my attention. I thought, oh, I'm going to stop on this one. So today's sermon has a weird title, Thrice. That's an old term, means three times. And we're going to talk about that. But anyway, as a backdrop to this, James 3:8 says this, no man can tame the tongue. It's an unruly evil full of deadly poison. With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men. Out of the same mouth proceeds blessing and cursing. My brothers, it ought not to be so. You can bless with your tongue and you can curse with your tongue. Now, I'm not a name it, claim it preacher. You guys know that. I'm not saying you can bless things into existence, and I'm not saying that you can curse things that will die, but I have seen with my own eyes the effect of curses that are repeated over and over again that become truth. And it's been amazing. One of the very first things I ever saw of this, and this is going to really offend some of you, and I'm sorry, but it's a true story. When I was younger, a book came out about talking to your plants, and they were doing all kind of studies about how talking to your plants made them grow, and they were proving it, scientifically. They were putting little tiny sensors on them, and it could actually kind of see what plants were feeling and things. And my brother Tim was in high school. He said, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That is absolutely not true." And so my mom said, "That's true. You talk nice to an animal and it responds to it." She goes, "That's only because you're talking nice to it. It's a tone. It's all tone. Words don't matter." He says, "I'm going to prove it to you. We had a cat." He said, "I'm going to show you that tone matters and not words." And so for the next week, every time he went by that cat, he'd pick it up. "Hey, kitty, 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 you are such a waste of space. We give you food and you don't do anything. You just lay around the house. You're so useless. Oh, kitty, kitty's useless. And things like that. That cat stopped eating. It did. It stopped eating. Its hair was falling out. And Mom said, "You got to stop that." And then he had to stop and kind of reverse the thing and tell it how great it was all the time. It actually affected the words, not the tone. The words affected it. And I've seen it happen in families. I've seen fathers curse their sons without meaning to by saying, "You're useless. You'll never be anything." And I've seen that come to pass. We can bless and we can curse. What we say with our mouth matters. We're not God. We can't create universes with our mouths. But boy, we can really impact people in our lives by the repetition of blessings and curses. And James is right. We should not use the same mouth to bless and curse. In fact, we should stop cursing. Why would we do that? Why would we curse our marriages? Why would we curse our families? Why would we allow ourselves to preach the devil's sermons? When God speaks, he creates. How do you use your words? All right, so we're going to talk about this today. What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. I love A.W. Tozer. I'm just going to, again, try to read through chapter 18 here without too much kibitzing, and then we're going to break down the thrice thing. Okay, this is John 18. Again, we're just leaving now. We're finally, we've been on like right after Passover for weeks here, but now they're going to leave. They're going to go. So when Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples over the brook Kidron. Oh boy, over the brook Kidron. I'm going to tell you what that means in a second. I'm telling you, John put stuff. Where there was a garden which he and his disciples entered, and Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place. For Jesus often met there with his disciples. Then Judas, having received a detachment of troops and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, came there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. Now, I got to tell you that the word here that gets translated detachment does not really portray the full weight of the actual word that's used here, which is cohort. A cohort of soldiers. This is Roman soldiers. This is not temple guards. These are Roman soldiers. A cohort is a minimum of 600 soldiers. I always love the movies, but have like two guys with a spear, come here for Jesus. No, 600 battle-tested soldiers show up to arrest Jesus. Now you might think, why in the world would they do that? Well, because Rome knows nothing about what Jesus is preaching. They don't care what Jesus is preaching. They care the fact that the Jews said, hey, he shows up in the wilderness and draws a crowd of 5,000 people. That scares them. Because the Jews were well known for being really, really bad at being subjugated. They had many uprisings, many rebellions. And by the way, every time there was an uprising and a rebellion, the guy leading it claimed to be the Messiah. And so they said, here's another one. We've done it. We've been through this before. This guy's claiming to be the Messiah. You need to take care of him. So they showed up with 600 soldiers because they don't know if there's going to be a crowd there or not. So that's why they actually show up with 600 soldiers, and that's important for what's going to happen next. But it's interesting because they show up there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. He puts that in there too. Lances, torches, and weapons. Now we can assume they brought torches and lanterns since this is night, but John tells us that. He lets us know they brought that, right? Now Jesus crosses the Kidron Valley in John 18:1. David crossed the same valley when he was betrayed by his son who was trying to kill him, Absalom. That's what John's trying to tell us. This is the valley you cross when you're being betrayed. So that's kind of interesting. Now, soldiers arriving with lanterns and torches brought artificial light to arrest the one who is the light of the world. Do you see what John's doing there? He's treating light as theological. It's not physical. So they bring artificial light to light up their darkness when the light of the world is standing there. So that's what John's kind of giving us. I told you I was not going to kibitz, but some of it I just have to. Okay. Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that would come upon him, went forward and said to them, whom are you seeking? And they answered, Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus said to him, I am he. He doesn't say, I am he. I put that in italics. If you look in your Bible says, he said, I am he. But he does not say that. If you look at the Greek, he simply says, I am. He speaks his memorial name, his covenant name. He tells them, I am. And Judas who betrayed him was with them. And when Jesus said that, I am, they all fell to the ground. They fell backwards to the ground. 600 battle-tested men. When Jesus speaks his name, fall just by the weight of his name. Remember we talked about the weight of glory, how we can't stand the weight of glory. This is a symbol. This is Jesus showing the weight of his glory. By declaring his name, they can't stand before it. The other thing we have to understand is if Jesus can do that with a word, which he can, he does not have to be arrested right now. They haven't caught him or trapped him in any way. He knows all things that are going to happen. John's clear of that. He's allowing himself to be taken because he doesn't have to. If you can knock down 600 soldiers by saying your name, you can imagine what else he could say to destroy them. But he doesn't. They draw back. They fall to the ground. And then he comes and says, whom are you seeking? Get up, guys. Whom are you seeking? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. Now what Jesus is about to do is say it again, but this time, in the way that God does, he shields his glory from it. Because he can do that. He does that with Moses. When he speaks to him, he doesn't show his full glory. So Jesus is going to hold back this time because he doesn't want to keep knocking them down. He could. It's kind of amusing. And watch this, guys. He could keep doing that, but he's not going to because the purpose of this is he knows he has to be crucified, right? He's going to be dead. He says, I have told you that I am. Again, he doesn't say he. I have told you I am. Therefore, if you seek me, let these go their way. You're after me? Let these go. See, if you don't understand some of the stuff that's going back, it doesn't make sense they would let the rest of them go. When there's a rebellion, they not only take the leader, they try to take all of his lieutenants as well, and they're all there in one place. It doesn't make sense that they would let them go. Why not grab them all, take them all in? We're going to have to come back and get them later. We'll just take them now. But when Jesus knocks them over the first time, they go, okay, let's compromise here. Let's just take him. So they let the rest go. But he's very, very clear that John says he does this to fulfill the prophecy that says, those whom you gave me, I have lost none, which is what Jesus said last week in his prayer. I'm not going to lose any of them. They're all going to be safe except Judas. They're all safe because that was prophetically given to them, right? Now, Simon Peter, who said he would never desert Jesus, The rest may desert you, but I never will, is about to show his stuff. There's 600 soldiers there with weapons. And he pulls his somewhere. He got a sword. Good old Peter has a sword. And he says, I'm going to fight. And he attacks the clerk of the priest. I love that. There's all these guys with swords and spears. Ha! I'm going to get the guy who has nothing. I got him, Jesus. I got this mean-looking servant. You get the rest. And Jesus says to Peter, put your sword in the sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which my Father has given me? I'm here to be sacrificed. Just put that away. And he actually heals that poor man's ear. So the cohort of troops and the captain and the officers of the Jews arrest Jesus, bound him, and they led him away to Annas first. For he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas. Cephas is different. Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Now it was Caiaphas who advised the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. So this is a backdrop, which tells us who he is, right? And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. It's interesting, he doesn't say who, just one of the other guys followed as well. Now, that person actually went in the courtyard with Jesus. You have to understand how these things were set up. They had multiple courtyards, and then they had kind of the main place. The court itself was open because they would hold trials there, and people would come and watch. So it's kind of an open courtroom, and then they have courtyards outside. And so what it's saying is Peter stayed in a far one, and the other disciple went all the way in. And when Peter was standing outside, the other disciple went back and spoke to the woman who kept watch on the door and said, "Psst, I know him. It's okay." Because he was known by them. And so she lets him in. And then that servant girl, when he's walking in, says to him this, "Are you not also one of this man's disciples?" And then ends with, "Are you?" It's actually a negative question. It's like, you're not one of them, are you? And it's an easy question to say no to, basically. Now, the interesting thing is he's with another disciple. That disciple is well known to them. They know he's a disciple of Jesus. Now, we don't know, by the way, if this is one of the 12 or just one of the followers of Jesus, but they know this guy's a follower of Jesus. She does. She knows him personally. And when Peter comes in, are you one of them too? But she actually asks it the other way. You're not one of those, are you? Right? So the other disciples know. So it's so easy for Peter to say, no, I'm with him. We're with Jesus. It's so easy to say that. She's a servant girl. On the social status, she's nothing. This isn't like, some bouncers by the velvet rope. You're not one of them, are you? It's not that. It's a servant girl. Her job's to make sure that riffraff doesn't get in the door. That's it. She's a nobody. And as he's walking past, she goes, you one of them? He said, I am not. Not me. That guy is. I barely know him. I definitely don't know that Jesus guy. Why? Because he knows that Rome's going to want to gather up all the lieutenants. And he just cut that guy's ear off. You got to figure they're pretty mad at him. He doesn't want to be caught up in all this, but he wants to see what's going to happen. And I think, I don't know, I think he's hoping against hope that Jesus is going to get out of this. He's gotten out of these things before. They tried to stone Jesus several times by this point. So I think Peter wants to see him get out. This is different. This is Rome now. He's gotten out of the high priest stuff before. He's gotten out of temples before. But this is different. This is Rome. So it doesn't look good for Jesus. But I think Peter's there because he wants to make sure, maybe he'll get out. So he's watching from a distance, but he's watching. Okay, that's the setup. So the first time, Jesus, and remember, Jesus told him, you're going to deny me 3 times. Here's one. He just did it. I don't know if that hits him or not. But so he goes. Now, what's interesting is, he's sitting by the fire. The Bible tells us he comes in when that woman asks him, and he warms himself by the fire with the other people. There's a fire, in fact, a fire of coals, a charcoal fire. The Greek word actually means charcoal fire here. There's only 2 times it shows up in the entire New Testament. This is one. Stick a pin in that. This is one. This is the first time it shows up. This is one of 2 times we're going to see that phrase, the charcoal fire. And he stood there with the rest of them as they're watching, warming himself by the fire. Okay. Now we cut back in. The high priest asked Jesus and his disciples about his doctrine. Jesus answered about his disciples and his doctrine. And Jesus answered, look, I spoke openly to the world. This isn't scripture, by the way. This is just me telling you what's happening. This is scripture. I spoke openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues and the temples where the Jews always meet. In secret, I have said nothing. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. Indeed, everyone knows what I said. You have pulled me in here in the middle of the night to ask me stuff that's well known. What are you doing? Everybody knows what I said. You could ask anybody what I said. This was not a secret. Now, he's saying this as much for all the Romans watching as anything. This is not a secret rebellion. This has been wide open. I have never hid this. Everybody knows what I said. It shouldn't be a surprise to a soul. But when he had said this, one of the officers, this is a priest officer, struck him, smacked him in the face. Why are you answering the high priest like that? He asked you a question. And look what Jesus says. Well, if I've spoken evil, tell me what I said. What I said that was wrong. Why are you hitting me? But if I didn't, why are you hitting me? He's not backing down for any of this, but he's not causing a fight either. So Annas sends him bound now over to the high priest. Tie him up, take him to the next level of the court. Meanwhile, Peter stood and warmed himself. He's out there, you know. Now I'm going to be juxtaposing a couple things here. I'm going to be showing you the same glimpse of this scene from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because I want you to get the full picture. Okay, so this is John. And so they're all watching him around a fire, and they're listening to this, and they saw Jesus get struck, and they see him get led away, and they look at him and says, aren't you one of them? Aren't you one of those disciples? And another girl there says, yeah, this guy was with Jesus of Nazareth. And he denies with an oath. He swears to God he doesn't know Jesus. Isn't that a weird thing? I swear to God I don't know Jesus. What a weird thing to say for one who knows Jesus. And the second time, Peter has denied him, right? And then one of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the guy whose ear he cut off, is standing there and says, wait a minute, I know you. You're the guy who cut my cousin's ear off. I recognize you. You don't look as tough without your sword. Didn't I see you just now in the garden with him? And he began to call curses and swear oaths, saying, I don't know the man. He's basically saying, may the God of heaven, may Yahweh strike me dead if I'm lying to you. I don't know that man. Wow. We've moved, haven't we? It started as a little tiny note to the servant girl to, I swear to God. And now he's saying, may I swear on my life. May God strike me dead if I'm telling you a lie. I have no idea who that man is. I don't know him. I'm just here with you guys at the fire. And immediately, while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. Because Jesus said, before the cock crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. He said, no, never, Lord. The others will, but I won't. See, I have a sword. And then, this is interesting, the Lord turned and looked at Peter. So they're leading him out. Picture this. They're leading him out through that, and that's when they're asking these questions. Well, that man, you know him. You were with him. And they're leading Jesus out. He says, I swear to God to heaven, may God in heaven strike me dead if I know that man. And Jesus turns and looks at him right then. Can you imagine what happens at that moment when Jesus looks right at him? Eyes lead. You don't know me, Peter? You said you would never deny me. You just swore by God in heaven, you don't even know me? Those eyes. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? And he remembered before the roast what was said. And then he went out. And he wept bitterly. But he wept bitterly for a purpose. He just disconnected himself from his heavenly rights. Okay, so artificial light came to arrest the light of the world, and then they lead him on to the praetorium. And it was early morning by now. But they themselves did not go, the Jews don't, because that would make them unclean and it's Passover, so they can't do that. So they simply send him in, and Pilate comes out and it looks at him and says, what accusation do you bring against this man? And the Jews say, look, he's an evildoer. We wouldn't have brought him to you if he wasn't. Just do your thing. We wouldn't have delivered him otherwise. And Pilate says, look, you take him and judge him. Why are you asking me to do it? They said, because we can't put anybody to death. That's why. We're bringing you here to do your job. Put him to death. He's a rebel and a trouble. We can't kill him, so you've got to do it. So this is clear. That's why they're signifying that they want Rome to kill him. Okay. And so Pilate goes back in, calls Jesus, says, look, are you the king of the Jews? They're saying you're claiming to be the king of the Jews. The reason he's asking him that is, of course, because that's what they all claimed. I'm the rightful king of the Jews. I'm the Messiah. I'm going to lead you into rebellion against Rome. So the first question they ask him, are you the king of the Jews? Do you think you're a king? Because there can't be another king except Caesar. And Jesus says, are you speaking for yourself, or did somebody else tell you this? Do you ask me if I'm the king of the Jews, or did those Jews tell you that? I love Jesus. He's not backing down from this stuff. He's not playing the game. And Pilate says, am I a Jew? I don't know. Your own chief priests have delivered you to me. So tell me, what have you done? And Jesus says, look, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight. All except Peter, of course, who ran away. But my servants would fight, so I wouldn't be delivered to the Jews. But my kingdom is not of this earth. It's not from here. Yes, I'm a king, but I'm not from this. My kingdom isn't here. Which puts Pilate in a weird place, because he doesn't seem to be leading a rebellion. He's clearly saying he is royal, but he's not saying he's leading a rebellion. And so he says, are you a king then? Are you saying you're a king? And Jesus said, you say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. And Pilate says, what is truth? That's a scary thing for the judge who's trying to decide truth to say. He said, I have no idea what truth is. I'm just the judge. And then when he had said that, he went out to the Jews and said, look, he's not a rebel leader. I find no fault in this man. You brought him to be killed. I don't even see why. He's clearly not leading a rebellion. So Pilate knows that truth. All right, let's talk. Let's break this down. Let's talk about the power of three. Because what we see here is there are 3 times that Jesus has said the word, I am. 3 times. When they said, he says, who are you coming to see? They say, Jesus of Nazareth. He says, I am he. Except for what he said, he really said just, I am. And they draw back. That's the first time he says it. What does that mean? What happens here? It's revelation, right? The armed soldiers asked, who are you? And I want you to see 600 soldiers show up, and he stepped forward to meet them. He doesn't wait for them to come. He hears the noise. He's not shrinking. He's not hiding. He gets up from prayer and walks in front of all of them boldly and says, who are you here for? And I said, Jesus of Nazareth. He says, I am. And they fall down because he has declared his name. But the interesting thing is they fall backwards. Did you see that? They don't just fall. They don't just pass out. Because that could be, you do that, you could faint and they could fall. But they don't. They fall backwards, which shows that power hit them. Right? That's how you fall backwards. You don't fall forwards. You don't fall flat. When a blast of wind hits you, it knocks you over. And that's what the enemies of God do. They didn't just fall, they fell backwards, because that's what Isaiah says. The word of the Lord was to them, precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little, there a little, that they might go and fall backward and be broken. He says, I'm going to show my power to them little by little, and it's going to knock them back. And that's what Jesus does. That's just a little bit of his power. Just his name, just speaking his name, blew them backwards. That's what they do, because they're enemies. They're enemies of the Lord, and they will fall backwards. They came for Jesus of Nazareth, but they found the living God. Oops. You thought you were just grabbing a guy from Nazareth. What you just found is God incarnate on earth. That's the first time he declares his name. The second time he declares his name, he holds back the glory, so he doesn't knock them over, and says, look, if you seek me, then let these go. Do you see what he's doing the second time? The first time he does it to declare his rightful glory. The second time he does it to protect his people. Now he's acting as a shepherd. This is the voice of the shepherd. I'm going to make sure that none of my people get hurt. So the first time I'm declaring who I am. The second time I'm declaring it in order to stop my people from being hurt. This is Jesus acting as the shepherd. He uses his authority to protect him, right? Now, the interesting thing is later, when he's standing in front of Pilate, he says it again. And you miss it if you don't speak Greek, which I don't, but I have help. So Pilate therefore says, are you a king then? And Jesus' answer actually means, literally, if you read the Greek, you say this because a king I am. That's literally how it's written in the Greek. Again, he says the word I am. The third time. But you see what he's doing the third time. The first time he declared who he is. The second time he said I am in order to protect his flock. The third time he is affirming he is the rightful king of heaven. His final I am establishes his place in the kingdom of heaven. You see that? He said, for this purpose I came. My kingdom is from another place. So the first time he declares his glory on earth. The second time he uses I am, he uses to protect his people. And the third time he's yet. The second time he's bound and he's in front of the courtroom. And the third time he's put before Rome itself. It looks like things are going from bad to worse for Jesus on earth. But what he's doing, he's actually asserting a greater power each time by his I am in heaven. Because he doesn't care about what's happening on earth. Little tidbit there. Okay. Peter doesn't say I am, does he? He says something else 3 times. He says, I am not. It's interesting that he says it 3 times. Exactly the opposite of what Jesus does. See, courage is not simply one of the virtues. It's the form of every virtue at the testing point. You need to have courage if you're going to stand up for Christ. Okay. And we were told before this all happened, he said, you're going to be tested, Peter. But I'm praying you're going to come back to me. Satan's asked for you, but I'm praying you're going to come back to me. That's what Jesus says when you return. So the first one says, when he goes to the servant girl, Peter says, I am not. Why? Why does he say that? Why does he tell her, I'm not one of his disciples? Because he was afraid they wouldn't let him into the fire. He's going to go into the inner courtyard now. He's going to stand by the fire with everybody else, and he's worried that if they know he's a disciple, they won't let him in. So in order to be able to warm himself by the fire, he has to say, no, I have no idea how it is. I'm just here. It's a spectacle I want to watch. So Peter stood with them and warmed himself. He had to compromise to do it, but hey, he's trying to keep an eye on Jesus. I'm sure in his mind this was no big deal. She's a servant girl. It doesn't mean anything. No, I'm not. Because I want to stand there. And I want to keep an eye on Jesus. I'm here for him. That's how it works. The first compromise always feels free. You need to catch this, right? Because we're not Christ in this story, we're Peter. The first compromise is always free. It feels like no big deal. It's a little lie. Just a small lie. No one cares. It had no meaning. The first compromise always feels free. That's how Satan starts. Such a small thing. How can it matter? Servant girl asked you. You're doing the right thing, Peter. You're staying close to Jesus. That's your job. The second time, when they say, you're him, now he has to escalate. Because now he's there. If he wants to stay there, now's not the time to say, yeah, you got me. I'm actually Peter. I'm the rock. You can't now. You got to continue the lie. But now the lie grows. And so this is what people do, by the way, when they're lying, is they start trying to make it look like they can't be lying by invoking oaths. We know people like that. I swear to God. Yeah, I know. I've lied 100 times, but this time I'm telling you the truth. I swear to God I'm telling you the truth. This is so common with people. And the more someone tells you, Honestly, in truth, I'm telling you that the more people say that, they're lying. Did you pick up on that? The bigger the preamble before the yes or the no, the more they're lying. It almost doesn't matter what comes after it, because they're lying already. And this is what he's doing. With an oath, he says, I am not. Second time he speaks. Why? He wants to stay by the fire. He's still watching. He doesn't want people thinking something bad of him. But do you understand that when he swears with an oath, what he does, he has broken fellowship with the other disciples. So his second I am not wasn't just to get entrance. It was to say, I'm disassociating with those people at all, because he has sworn an oath that he isn't one of them. So first it's a little lie. Now I'm separating myself from the fellowship. And the third time, didn't I see you in the garden? And Peter denied again and began to curse and swear, calling down heaven's judgment to flee heaven's kingdom. Isn't that bizarre? He's actually saying, may God in heaven strike me dead if I'm part of Jesus' kingdom of heaven. How bizarre. So first it was no big deal. The first one's free. Second time he severed himself as he's no longer one of the fellowship. Well, he's not one of the 12 anymore. And the third time, I don't even want to be in heaven anymore. I'm not part of that. I'm not part of anything that Jesus is doing. And then Jesus looks at him. And it cuts through him. So the contrast between those two, pretty easy, right? Jesus walks towards 600 soldiers and says, I am. Peter shrinks from a servant girl and says, I am not. And then Jesus uses his authority to protect his people, and he swears an oath to cut himself off from the people. You see the opposites going on here in John's gospel? John's so cool. And then Jesus says, I am, to claim his throne before the empire. This is the most powerful place on earth. And Jesus says, doesn't matter. My kingdom's in heaven. He's securing his place in the heavens. Peter uses heaven to cut himself off from heaven. It can't be more different than the three I ams and the three I am nots and how they're used by the people. Now, again, we're not Jesus. I don't expect us to act like Jesus. I don't expect us to stand forth when 600 soldiers come forth. But we need to look at Peter's progression, because he was a very, very important disciple. He wasn't just kidding. I know we sometimes make fun of Peter because he's just always so out there. He's us. He was strong in his faith. I mean, yeah, okay, he did carry the sword. He meant it. And if it can happen to him, it can happen to us. And it starts by that first I am not, denying who we are in God's sight. And he knows this, by the way. The reason this thing cuts through him so hard is because he knows what Jesus said here. Whoever denies me before men, I will also deny before my Father who is in heaven. And he just denied himself before men, women, servant girls, and Jesus Christ himself denied him. There's no coming back for Peter. That's why he went outside and wept bitterly. He has systematically cut himself off from the fellowship and from eternal life, and he knows it. He's well aware of what he just did. He wasn't at the time. At the time, he just caught up and seen the right thing to do. But now he knows. When Jesus looks at him, that cuts through him. He's done. I wonder if you've ever felt there. Have you ever felt you got to the place where you're done? That's it. There's no coming back from this one. I screwed up big time. There is no coming back, because there's no way back for Peter. But as Corrie ten Boom puts it, there is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still. Because remember I told you there's two places in the Bible where the charcoal fire shows up. We haven't come to the next one yet. It's going to show up in 2 weeks. But I'm jumping ahead because I have to show you this. Because there's another charcoal fire. After Jesus is crucified, after Jesus is resurrected, and Jesus is standing on the beach, and Peter and the disciples are in a boat, and they see this man they don't know on the beach. He says, come on, and they come on in. He says, I'll give you some fish. And Peter walks up on land, and there's a charcoal fire there. Same words in the Greek. Very same words in the Greek. after Jesus is resurrected, as soon as they come to land, they saw a fire of coals there and fish laid out and bread. The same fire that ruined him, Jesus is about to use to restore him. He denied Jesus 3 times, and Jesus is going to give him an opportunity to say 3 times, I love you, Lord. And so we'll restore him. So every person here has warmed by the wrong fire. There's been moments in our life we have been in the wrong place, and we know it, and we're warming ourselves by the wrong fire. We're hanging out with sinners we shouldn't be with. We're hiding who we are. It seemed to cost us nothing. But what it's doing is it's getting ready to consume you. This is how it works. This is the progression that we have to worry about, the progression we see in Peter. Now, that's bad, but it's good to know that your Savior is waiting by the fire to give you real warmth of redemption. There's not a pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still. The question is, we're going to be open and be honest like Peter and accept it. Or do we believe we really are just beyond Jesus' ability to redeem us? I get told that sometimes, oh, if you knew what I've done. Jesus doesn't want me. And I'm telling you, he's waiting by the fire for you to bring you back.